Support and skepticism for a new transit plan. We head to Macomb County to hear the biggest concerns. Plus, how is design changing Detroit's economy?
People don't often know what design is, so they don't really always connect the dots.
My conversation with Olga Stella of Design Core Detroit. Plus headlines with MiWeek contributors Nolan Finley and Stephen Henderson. I'm Christy McDonald. MiWeek is coming up.
I have a question. Who wants to go first? To win? Who wants to grow our business? Who wants to make more money? Who wants more job opportunities? If you want Michigan to compete and become a top 10 state, raise your hand. Together, we've turned Michigan around and started moving forward. Now help us build a stronger Michigan than ever. Raise your hand at strongermichigan.com.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Hi there, welcome to MiWeek. I'm Christy McDonald, glad that you could join us. We have headlines, plus a look at how the design sector in Detroit is growing. But we are starting tonight with a One Detroit closer look at the regional transit plan the RTA is shopping around Southeast Michigan. At the same time, the State House is taking up a debate on a proposal for cities and townships to opt out of the RTA plan. Let's bring in our MiWeek contributors Nolan Finley of the Detroit News, Stephen Henderson of WDET Radio. Hi guys, how are you?
Great to see you.
It's a good week. It's good to see you.
You have a different cup than we do.
Do I have a different mug than you do? I mean, these MiWeek mugs are pretty rare and special.
Yours has got
it must be
coloring at the top.
A MiWeek 2.0. It's lipstick. That's your lipstick on there. That's it. All right, let's talk transit. So I think it's very interesting. The RTA is going around to several communities and saying, this is our plan now, and kind of gauging where people stand with this. At the same time, in the State House, they're saying, well, maybe we should just have an opt-out plan for some cities and townships. Doesn't this totally go against what a regional transit system could be, Nolan?
Yeah, it's a mess at this point. They're trying to hodgepodge something together just to save it. I think they should pull it off the table and do what they should have done from the beginning. Go back and create legislation that creates the truly regional plan, one system. And they can do that. I mean, they've got to do the political work to do it. But that was what SMART was supposed to be when it formed, and never became that. And I think that's what this has to be before it's going to be acceptable.
Well, you're in an election year right now, and we're going to have a serious turnover in the House and in the Senate, Stephen.
Yeah, well, they're not going to do what Nolan is suggesting, and it's because there are all of these sort of pratfalls that surround that question: political, geographic, racial, economic. And those are the things that have tripped us up on transit for 40 years. And I don't know that you can just sort of blunder through those things. Maybe if you had a governor who was pushing something like that, the legislature might have the appetite for it. But right now, what they're going to do is they're going to pander to all of the kind of fears that people have, the irrational fears that people have of creating rational mass transit in Southeast Michigan.
All right,
so you're going to spend billions of dollars then, and this isn't going to work.
Well,
I don't know that it's not going to work. I mean, the plan that's on the table is pretty good. It involves everybody. It is very different from the plan that voters narrowly rejected just 2 years ago. I think if it gets to November, it has a good chance of passing.
All right, so hang on. Let me tell you this. Well, they were having these meetings all around the community. They're having them in Detroit. They're having them in Oakland County. They had one in Macomb County, and I wanted to go to Macomb County because Macomb was the one that turned it down last time. Also Oakland County, but you also have Macomb County Executive Mark Hackle, who said, "I'm not going to support this," and I wanted to hear what people in Macomb have to say. Go ahead and take a look. Macomb County, late last week, among the stacks at the Mount Clemens Library, the talk centers on transit and more buses. It's a public meeting to explain and get feedback on the Regional Transit Authority's Connect Southeast Michigan plan, a $1.5 mil tax increase that needs voter approval. And if regional transit is ever going to be passed, people in Macomb County need to buy in.
I say this is not a protest because it's a promote.
Promoting what?
People using the bus.
Sherry Wells is a booster of SMART's fast bus service that started this year.
But this fast bus, it's every 15 minutes, which is wonderful. And then I got realizing that's what it's been every other city I've been at for decades.
Fast has routes up and down 3 major regional corridors and out to Metro Airport.
Yes, and the fast bus goes down Gratiot and it stops at the Eastern Market and it's got to stop at Comerica Park.
The Connect Southeast Michigan plan builds on FAST, continuing to integrate bus systems in Macomb, Oakland, Wayne, and Washtenaw counties. It's based on Wayne County Executive Warren Evans' proposal to add more bus routes and create a commuter rail line from Detroit to Ann Arbor.
First of all, our region is changing, and so when I say investing in people, the people in our region, we're getting older, and we definitely need more mobility options. On the flip side, millennials, we have more millennials living in our region now, staying in our region. They don't want to necessarily drive and get around the region the same way that generations in the past have.
The RTA's presentation showed how far we trail other cities funding mass transit, like Indianapolis, Nashville, and Columbus. Those cities are also finalists for the new Amazon headquarters, a bid Detroit didn't get because of a lack of transit. According to the RTA, Connect Southeast Michigan would cost an additional $10 a month to a homeowner with property valued at $150,000. Leon Drolet is a Macomb County commissioner and was a vocal opponent of the transit tax in 2016 and the plan now.
This plan still banks on things like commuter rail and trolleys and buses. As much as they try to wrap in some of the new language to update that language, the money is going toward, it's essentially zombie transit that's already dying, if not dead.
I'd rather pay my $120 a year to get the roads fixed. I'd rather pay the $120 on my taxes. I mean, I haven't ridden a bus since I've been 15 years old, and I'm 70 now. So that kind of tells you where I feel about the buses. I feel sorry for folks who can't afford a car, the high price of insurance. I love to help them out, but I do vote for SMART every year. I think that's a good system when it is. But I'm kind of done paying for everybody else. That's my argument.
Voters failed to approve the RTA's millage request in 16 by a slim margin. The RTA has more work to do as it tries to bring this new request to the ballot this fall.
I would say overall there's been a lot of support for the vision, and so we'll be taking that feedback back to the board and working with them to talk about what changes need to be made to see if this vision can be implemented.
Okay, so I think we're still hearing the same arguments that we heard back in 16 of I'm going to pay $120 a year and I'm not going to necessarily see the benefits of this regional transit plan. And so you have people in northern Oakland County and you have people in northern Macomb and parts of Macomb saying, this is never going to touch me. Right. So how are we ever going to move beyond that argument in terms of when you're talking about an entire region, you may be paying for something that does not run by your front door?
Or that you're not going to use. I mean, I think the basic issue here that we still haven't got around is you got to convince people who are paying for a bus system now they don't use to pay for another bus system that they don't believe they'll use. And I don't think the pushers of this proposal have done a good enough job of convincing people that this is going to be useful to you. And until they can make that happen, I don't think it has much of a chance.
So they've got to be able to shape and mold this into some kind of ballot proposal and then vote to get it there and then start to convince people. And you've got a timeline that now is starting going to run a little short.
It's pretty tight. I mean, I think it's worth doing if for no other reason than that, this is something that has to get resolved in this community. You can't continue with what we have. And we just saw I think it was this week, a story about the discussion that the Amazon folks had with people in this community after we didn't get transit, or if we didn't get their second headquarters. Why didn't we? The first thing they said was, you don't have the kind of transit that we need to get people around. Losing out on something like that, and we could talk about the pros and cons of Amazon itself, but if Amazon believes that, there are other people who would come to the state of Michigan, who would come to Southeast Michigan, who would also point that out and say, we're going to go somewhere else. This hurts us economically, and you've got to get people what you really have to do is get people in the state of mind where they're not thinking about how does this directly benefit me, but how does this benefit the region in a way that ultimately benefits us all. And we have gotten really far away from that in the way that we vote and make decisions in this community.
But that's a philosophical greater good conversation that I think that we have kind of changed our narrow focus in how we talk about things.
How come everybody else in the country can have that conversation and come up with solutions that make sense? There's not something inherently wrong with us in our DNA that prevents us from doing it. It is cynical narrative spun by our leadership, I think, that do it.
Another community that's doing it this way, where they're trying to meld now 4 separate bus systems.
Chicago.
4 separate bus systems? Chicago's got an overall transit.
Chicago has the CTA, which runs the buses and the L in Chicago. It has a suburban train line that connects to the L. It has suburban bus lines and that operate independently in several communities. It's not one system, but it operates as one system. It functions in a way that people
Do they have an advantage, though, because they started their mass transit long time ago?
They've been at it a lot longer than we have, and there's no question that when they were doing these things, some of the impediments that we are dealing with now probably weren't really on the table. But you know, it's not true that every other community has a single transit authority. They do in some places. Maryland is a great example of where the state runs all of transit.
But you have different modes of transportation there. This is all buses, and they're already paying for the SMART system, which was supposed to be regional transit. Detroit opted out in the beginning. Then you had suburban communities opt out, so it's not serving that function. Why not work off the platform we have instead of trying to sell a third system?
You don't have to sell me on that, but I mean, the hurdles to that include the mismatch between those two systems that exist. You would really have to dissolve those two systems and start over.
And perhaps, but are the hurdles there greater than the hurdles of getting this on the ballot and getting it passed?
I think talking about leadership is a big thing as well. When you look at what certain people are pushing for and what they're not pushing for, the larger conversations there. All right, but I would encourage people to go ahead and look at this proposal. Go to the RTA, look at what they're proposing. Go to some of these meetings and ask some questions. We'll see if this actually makes it to the ballot in the fall. All right, I want to show you a bit of a conversation I had about design in Detroit. About 3 years ago, Detroit was designated a UNESCO City of Design. Now, we're the only city in the U.S. with this designation, but we join 116 other cities around the world. And it means that design and creative industries are a major factor in our urban development. And with so many changes happening in the city, I spent some time with Olga Stella. She's the head of Design Core Detroit, about how design makes a difference where people live and work and drives economic development. How does the rest of the world see Detroit and design?
You know, they're fascinated by it. You know, I think when we travel, when we welcome people here, they're really interested in seeing the ways that we're using design to tackle some of our challenges. A lot of that is, you know, neighborhood blight, but there's also opportunities in early childhood education, in mobility, and so they want to learn from us, and they come here really, I think, with an open heart to learn from what's happening in community, and both whether it's, you know, in R&D in businesses or here at the College for Creative Studies and other institutions, but a lot of what's also happening in the grassroots, and just really excited to learn from us and to work with Detroiters.
All right, so Design Core Detroit, you just put out a 75-page report taking a look at inclusive design, some of the economic impact that design can go along with Detroit. Tell us what else you found in this report and kind of how that sets up what you're going to be tackling in the next couple of years.
So I think the thing that's most exciting, and we knew intuitively, is that Detroit's design community is small but mighty. We're 1% of the industries and 5% of the occupations in the region, but these businesses and people power 20% of the regional economic output. So have a huge impact, and it just kind of goes to my earlier point. People don't often know what design is, so they don't really always connect the dots. And so there's a lot of it's an opportunity to take advantage of a growing sector of our economy. The design industries and occupations have been growing at a faster rate, almost 6 times faster than the average regional economy. So huge opportunity for growth, really good jobs, And what's exciting to us is making the connection between these core design jobs that everybody knows, right? Architect, graphic designer, product designer.
Right.
But for every architect, you have a carpenter. For every graphic designer, you have somebody who's doing the web coding to create that app, right? A product designer needs a team assembler. And in Detroit, what's really exciting is the spectrum of design jobs, that these core design jobs are really part of a much larger design ecosystem. A lot more people, you don't have to be a trained designer, but you can be part of the design community in this larger ecosystem.
We have a pretty aggressive city planning department right now that's looking at different neighborhoods and how to change things around, make them more inclusive, and make sure that people have input into the process of what they want to see their neighborhoods look like. Have you been able to work with the city in that way, or how have you seen things change in terms of people feeling that they are part of the process when you're looking at design and when you're looking at development?
So it's been great working with the city's planning department, and I think they're drinking out of a fire hose in terms of all the things that they're trying to do. A number of their projects have joined on as partner projects that are part of this network helping to propel the city of Detroit, a city of design vision for Detroit. And what we're finding is that they're experimenting and learning too as they're trying to figure out different ways of incorporating community engagement and developing projects. One of the things that they're doing is called Design in a Box, where they're trying to take the planning department out into neighborhoods and really work with community members in their own neighborhood on planning projects, kind of showing them the tools of design and urban planning and bringing it right there, as opposed to asking people to come downtown or just come to a community meeting about a specific project. So trying to have much more of an interactive approach where they're developing longer relationships and trust in neighborhoods.
Is there any kind of fear that, oh, you know what, we want to make sure we don't screw this up? I mean, there's an opportunity to develop some parks in some different areas and more bike paths, and there's so many different facets of design and things that you could do in a city. Is there any concern that, well, we've got to make sure we're making the right steps or we're all on the same page? Or is that kind of the beauty of design, that there are different things that pop up in different spaces?
I think the thing that I'm most afraid of, and you know, we had 1,000 people participate in our process to develop this vision for the city of design and the strategy. And inclusive design overwhelmingly kind of came out of that process. People want to make sure that the design choices that we're making really are for everyone, and that we're really careful about thinking about kind of who is this for, right? Who are we designing for? And if we're thinking about just the newcomers who are moving into the city, then we're forgetting the people who've been here. And sometimes when we think about the people who've been here, we don't often, you know, we create stereotypes, so we don't often think about, you know, seniors and families and people of all different kinds of backgrounds. And so there's a real opportunity here for design to be really intentional, but for it to lift up what's already here in our community as part of that, you know, next phase of Detroit. Not just, you know, have some arbitrary standard of this is good design and bring in kind of the shiny, beautiful things and say, okay, we brought in the shiny, beautiful things, we're good now, we can go home. Right. Good design is really about embracing the local context, the people being, at least this is what the people we've worked with here in Detroit have said, is they want design to be that tool in lifting up what's authentically Detroit and bringing that into the future. And we think that's absolutely possible. It's already happening, and that's what's so exciting about this coalition that's, you know, emerged around the designation and is embracing this idea that inclusive design is, you know, our path to the future.
Do people assume that design is frivolous?
Of course they do. You know, this is the #1 thing we hear from the designers that we work with, is that, you know, businesses, developers often think that, you know, that's something I can do at the end. It's an extra. They don't understand that design is really strategy. And if you don't have designers at your table from the get-go, you're not going to have as good a product at the end, because designers are using creativity to solve a wide range of problems, and in doing that, developing a better solution.
Our thanks to Olga Stella. You can see my entire interview with her at MiWeek.org. I think it's really interesting when you talk about design and the fact that it is an economic driver, and that you have more and more people that are having jobs in that kind of creative sector, and then the encouragement of it and the fact that you have so many different pockets of development happening in the city at once, and how you kind of corral all of that so you're making what? the right
intentional
design
right?
decisions.
I think that's what they're really focused on, is making sure that things just don't happen, and then we sort of look at them and go, well, that doesn't
Who
really
decided
make a
to
lot
do
of
that?
sense. But making a conscious choice about how we design and where we put things and what we put in or out of the mix, I think is pretty important.
And important that you talk to people who are actually in those areas, and in those neighborhoods,
right,
and how that design will work with them. All right, our thanks to Olga. Now it's time for some headlines. All right, guys, I actually bring in some headlines. Two headlines for me I want to start off on a bit of a somber note. Brian Whiston, the state superintendent, passed away this week. He was diagnosed with cancer late last year, and he passed away. We've had him on the show a number of times. You know, I'm really passionate about talking about K through 12 education, and he had a very tough job on his plate. But I knew him actually when I was working as a reporter and anchor at Channel 7 when he was the Dearborn superintendent. Really always accessible, very frank in his conversation and assessment of what was happening, and especially he and I had a lot of conversations about funding for schools, and I really always appreciated that, and I always appreciated his input.
Yeah, I had a conversation with John Austin, the former school board president, who kind of engineered the choice of Brian as superintendent. You know, he's a Democrat, a staunch Democrat. Brian was a former chief of staff for a Republican. One of the things that was true about Brian was this ability to sort of get past partisanship and politics and sort of act in the best interest of schools.
Yeah, so our thoughts are out to his family this week. Another thing, the Republican candidates for governor debated in Grand Rapids last night. Nolan, did you watch a little bit of that?
Yeah, I mean, what struck me is there's not a dime's worth of difference in policy-wise between these candidates, at least the major candidates. There's not much difference on the nuts and bolts of how they would operate Michigan. And so it became, as this campaign has been, a sort of character attack, a character smear. Kelly and Schuette, Brian Kelly, Bill Schuette, continue to just tear each other apart. I don't see how that's doing a party that's going to have a struggle anyway this fall. I don't see how it's doing it any good.
So it was interesting. Wood TV was the one that did the debate, and they carried it here on WDIV in Detroit, around the state. And I encourage people to go back and take a look at it if you didn't see it last night. But they did this focus group of Republicans afterwards, and they asked them how they felt about the attacks that Callie and Schuette were doing back and forth. And they said they found that the most distracting part, and they didn't like it at all. And I'm wondering if they're going to take some of that feedback and change. But it seems no.
Well, people say that all the time. And then they go out and vote for the person who's making the attacks on the other person anyway. I mean, people don't like it. They wish politics were something different, but it's not. I mean, this is not. Yeah, but I don't know that this is out of character for an inter-party race. I
think when you got an inter-party race,
you're concerned by all the mudslinging.
I just think it's going to kill Republican chances as well, or hurt them. When it's intra-party, it usually doesn't get this personal and this vicious. This is really ugly stuff. I mean, it reminds me a lot of the 2016 presidential primaries.
Right.
They're borrowing from that Trump playbook.
And they're touting, well, Schuette's touting Trump support, and they're all saying, well, I voted for Trump, but they're making it a lot about the president as well. All right, what did you see?
Well, the coroner broke ground on Eric Larson's development on the old ballpark in Corktown, right next to the new PAL field. It's just one more piece here. You got to say the timing of that. I mean, it's like they hit the jackpot breaking ground on that, a project that's been 5 years in the planning. The same week the Ford Motor Company discussed its plan to move big time into Corktown. Corktown over the next 3 to 5 years is going to be just boom city.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, what's your headline?
Speaking of ballparks, I'm not finding a lot of reasons to go to the ballpark these days, and not for any of the sports.
So wait a minute, is this Steven's Sports Corner graphic that I'm going to put up right now? All right, go ahead.
I deep down want to be a sports commentator, not a regular old boring political journalist. I can't remember the last time that we had all 4 major sports teams be as bad as they are.
Not one playoff game between them.
Right. When's the last time that happened? I think I was like 10 or 11 years old. the last time it was this.
You know, the
80s?
one thing I'd say about the Tigers though this season, we expected nothing out of them.
Yeah,
and
they're
they
scrappy.
haven't delivered a whole lot, but they've been fun to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, they are scrappy, and they're exceeding expectations, which is the key to success in life.
It is a little bit of
Set your expectations low.
And blow everyone away.
Is that on the front page of your book, Nolan? Is that in the foreword of the book? All right. All right. Well, it's always good to see you guys. Stephen Henderson, you can listen to him on WDET Radio in the morning from 9 to 10. Also, Nolan's on the radio in Superstation 910 from, what,
7 to 9. You could switch the channel.
That's right.
And
One
then you
to
can
the
read them
other.
in the Detroit News. That's going to do it for My Week. We're also on Facebook, on Twitter during the week. Check out myweek.org for all the shows that you might have missed. I'm Christy McDonald. We'll see you next Thursday from My Week. Take care.
I have a question. Who wants to go first to win? Who wants to grow our business? Who wants to make more money? Who wants more job opportunities? If you want Michigan to compete and become a top 10 state, raise your hand. Together, we've turned Michigan around and started moving forward. Now help us build a stronger Michigan than ever. Raise your hand at strongermichigan.com.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, Craft Made in Maryland cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.